maintain the balance between its Western and Eastern involvement. So maybe your experience will be of special value here. Chancellor.
Well, a couple of very thrilling questions. Personally, I think that the major problem of Europe is that still we are not taking ourselves serious enough. Because most of European politics is centering around issues that are of entire irrelevance for the livelihood of people on our continent. And European institutions have distanced themselves to a large extent from what they should do, and trying to exercise their political importance and their political impact on issues where a normal person thinks, are they all going crazy in Brussels or in Strasbourg? And this is, by the way, much more important as a route for the emerging populism in some of the countries than the dissatisfactory economic situation. Because if you study populism all around the European Union, there are a lot of countries that are performing quite well, where you have a lot of populism. I mean, Poland is performing very well, has a lot of populism. Austria is performing very well, has a lot of populism, and already before the financial and economic crisis started. And there's also other countries that are performing quite well, where populism is emerging. And if you look to some of the Scandinavian countries, which are among the best performers in Europe, rising populism. So I would warn you to solemnly connect the rise of populism with the dissatisfactory economic results for the broad masses of the population, especially what concerns employment and income. The roots for that are much, much deeper. Second thing, the major problem is that European leaders very often act with reference to their national audience and not to European necessities and politics. So to get the applause at home still is much more important than doing something reasonable for Europe, which is also understandable because all those guys are elected at home and want to get re-elected. This is where their major reference lies. And sometimes I had the impression when going to European Council meetings, do we really all go to the same meeting? Because when my advisors gave me the translations of the main newspapers of the capitals of the different European countries and which issues will be in the forefront of the meetings, you might have asked yourself, are all those guys going to the same meeting? Because there were different priority lists in all the different countries that are reflected in the national press. And sometimes many of the issues that you could read in the national press didn't even appear during the meeting. So you are, in a way, celebrating some sort of shadow boxing. Yeah? And I can tell you out of the Austrian experience, the most popular issue when an Austrian prime minister has to go to a European meeting and there is nothing special going on, in order to generate some sort of attraction, he says, well, these Brussels bureaucrats, they again want to take the water away from the Austrians, which means to Europeanize the rights on water and to sell water and water rights to others. So a typical issue of expropriation of national rights. This is the most popular issue. You only have to say that this is at stake in a Brussels meeting. All the tabloid newspapers will write about it, will put the Prime Minister in a position that he has to defend now the national interest and the national dignity. And then he goes to Brussels, and nobody is going to talk about it. And nothing will be written about it in the final document. But in the press conference after the Brussels meeting, you can say, we were so successful with our enduring fight already prior to the meeting. Everybody was afraid that if they are bringing it up, we are going to kill them, and we are going to make this a major issue in this conference. So they even didn't dare to bring it up. And at the end, you are coming home like the world champion in heavyweight boxing, because, again, you were killing the nasty spirit of the expropriation of Austrian water. And I'm sure that in all member countries you have one or two or three issues that always emerge before European meetings, which put you in a very comfortable position, because when nothing is happening, you're just defending what is already there. I mean, it's easy to pick a win, and therefore this is happening very often. Throughout the last years, uncomfortably enough, leaders were forced to take action because the situation became a little bit dangerous. And I remember when I was member of the European Council, I already for 1 year was talking about the emerging financial crisis and tried to explain colleagues that this will end up in a major economic crisis. But I can tell you, as long as they don't feel it, they are not ready to discuss it. And as long as they are not ready to discuss it, they will not enter any action. And it led till the beginning of summer 2008, when the world economy was on the verge to collapse, that European leaders were ready to take action. And it was the last moment. It was really the last moment to take action. And one has to be fair and underline that it was under the presidency of Nicolas Sarkozy that he, with his energy and motivation and the insight that we have to do something, created an atmosphere where things happened that were unimaginable for years. I mean, if you look into the documents that were decided by the European Council in 2008, 2009, impossible to agree even on a slight percentage of that in terms of economic governance. We are still not there where we should be, but all the progress that has been made throughout the years was impossible to be discussed among the member states for a very, very long time. Therefore, I think one of the true sentences is never miss a good crisis, because it seems that only in situations of crisis, major steps forward are going to be achieved. At least this is true for Europe. I mean, there wouldn't be a European Union without the disaster of the Second World War. I mean, let's face it, that's a reality. Yeah? And there wouldn't be a lot of useful economic governance measures without the economic and financial crisis of 2008. And my prediction is there would not be in future major agreements on security policies and common foreign policy if there wouldn't be the crisis that is created by the Russian aggression in Ukraine. Because till then, this was a non-starter. This was a debate for some intellectuals, but not for the leaders. And therefore, the future model of Europe, in my understanding, apart from the issue of still resolving some of the economic and political issues, the future will mainly go into foreign policy and security policy, because it's the question how and are we able to defend our values? Are we able to and willing to defend our political systems based on democracy and human rights? And do we also take the necessary measures against those that try to challenge us? And we are challenged, anyhow from the inside, by dissatisfaction, but now we are mainly challenged by the outside. Some say by globalization. I would say we are challenged more by the Russians. We are challenged by ISIS and some of the terrorist forces in the Middle East. But this will be the main issue, because if we are not ready to defend our values, they are going to vanish. And the final thing I want to say is, don't be illusionary. There is nothing like a free lunch. So to think that we can sit here and enjoy a good standard of life without investing in defense and security, it's an illusion. And it's also an illusion if we think we can do it alone as Europeans. And if the Americans are looking nowadays mainly to the Pacific out of different reasons, we shouldn't sit just there and complain about that, but trying to strengthen the institutions of the transatlantic cooperation. And therefore, the question of a transatlantic free trade and partnership agreement is not only an economic question. It's not only a trade question. It's also a political question. If the two columns of freedom, liberty, and democracy are going to continue their cooperation for the sake of the world.
Chancellor, thank you very much for this forceful message. I very much share your assessment of